What's up, guys? Justin Garcia, aka Master Chim here. And today we're going to talk about why you and your neighbor no longer like each other. And it is probably a global phenomenon, at least a national one here in the US. And I think the majority of people who are watching this understand what I am talking about. So, in my book, Tribalnomics, shameless plug, first 60 seconds of the video, I go into a concept called overlap and offset. And if you think of a Venn diagram, right? So you take two areas, and usually they're illustrated with circles, and you sort of overlap those two circles. There is usually a shaded area or an area where the two things are covered, and an area of the circles that are still not covered. Well, those areas that are by themselves, we call the offset of those two circles. The area that is covered, obviously, we call the overlap. So I break out a description of what it is we are as an identity in terms of our alliances through the overlap offset paradigm. When I am friends with you, I have a whole collection of things that make me me. And in turn, obviously, you have a whole collection, a whole slew of things that make you you. And these things that make us up as individuals are a combination of our biases, our physical drives, our preferences, our emotions, our knowledge, our processing speed. All these different things factor into who we are as individuals. And when we decide to form some sort of an alliance, a friendship, a business partnership, just the acknowledgement of the existence of somebody else in some sort of, cordial way, respectful way, what we're essentially doing is we're acknowledging the overlap that our identities have. So when two people who have an overlap that is based on a collection of things they have in common, it allows them to participate not only in the alliance, but also in the continued acknowledgement of the value of the other individual. One of the things you'll notice that in mainstream media, and this is, I'll use mainstream media as an example, but this goes back, as far back as societies do. The first step toward sabotaging any potential alliance is often the process of dehumanizing a particular individual or group in the eyes of the one that we're looking to sort of negate their ability to build an alliance. We look to dehumanize that group in the eyes of this one, so that this group looks at this other group as having no overlap whatsoever. So obviously, is dehumanization the process of removing overlap? No, actually, it's the last piece of overlap that we look to remove. When we dehumanize another individual or another group, what we do is we take that maybe last bit of overlap, the last commonality, our humanity, and we sabotage that as well. And if we could look at an individual or a group as not even being human like we are, then we have at that point an absolute zero level of overlap in our eyes, and the ability to make an alliance, to form some sort of mutually beneficial agreement is completely demolished. So why do you hate your neighbor? What does that have to do with hating your neighbor? Well, one of the things that we've noticed over this last year and change of this fiasco in which we find all of ourselves sort of navigating these days is we've been reduced quite successfully, quite effectively, into the most divisive state that we have, and I say emotional state of being, not United States, the emotional state, the most divisive states that we have ever experienced, certainly in our lifetimes. It is literally false dichotomy logic brought to life. You are either for this or you are for that. And there are some flagship, topics of controversy that I could cite. And, let me not give the algorithm too much of a hand in making sure nobody sees this video. But there are some topics that you watching this, and it doesn't matter where you are on any political spectrum, on any, on any position of public significance, but it's either this or that. Now, why has this been so effectively done? Well, one of the things you'll notice that has happened concurrently during this whole fiasco is we have been removed collectively. And I'm just going to speak about the U.S., although I do speculate that this applies globally to different, varying degrees. We have been removed from all of those rituals that have allowed us to create commonality with our fellow citizens, with our neighbors. And because all of these other rituals have been completely removed from our lives, we are now reduced to looking at these individuals through the lenses that, lo and behold, happen to be provided. The narratives are completely monopolized by politicians, by mainstream, media outlets, by advertisers, and maybe a little teamwork between the three of them. We're reduced to looking at each other through those limited lenses. Now, I'm somebody who owns a martial arts school, have for about 20 years. This is the 20th year I've owned a martial arts school. And I will say, throughout those 20 years, I have had every type of individual, every demographic, every level of preference in any category you could think of in life. And everybody was welcome. We all trained together. I own a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academy, and when it came to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we were able to exist on that mat. It didn't matter who we were outside of that mat, because in the ritual of doing Jiu-Jitsu, while we were on that mat, we were performing the ritual in common that allowed us to connect and create overlap with those people we shared that experience with. Well, they've removed all of that. All of those things have been removed. We're no longer going to the regular gym experiences, the parties, the parks, and listen, there is a varying degree of participation in this process throughout the country as it stands now. So I'm speaking collectively since this began till now. The average experience, what has been the average effect, on this removal of those commonality creating rituals. What we see now is not only do we not have those ways, those means, those rituals by which we could build an alliance through commonality with the people around us, but think about now that last stage that I referred to before, the dehumanization. Well, if we have nothing in common with people but our humanity, well, how do we then remove that if that was something we wanted to do? Because we were, these just immoral, just piece of garbage tyrants. What would we do? We would start to undermine looking at other people as fellow humans. We would start removing certain language they could use. We would start censoring certain people's ability to express themselves in a way that other people might find commonality. We would prevent them from even looking at each other's faces, lest we think that these people are human like us. Now, I don't mean to be hyperbolic. I don't want to exaggerate. I'm not trying to create this, the world is coming to pieces before our very eyes. However, I will say there is a lot of change occurring in how we interact with one another. And I think the more we become aware of the tools that are being applied, not necessarily by individuals, but certainly by individuals as well, but these tools that are being applied to the way we relate to other people and the effect it's having on our ability to see people as allies, as potential allies and individuals whereby we may share commonality. I'm of the mindset that an individual, man or woman, should be able to wrestle with ideas they don't agree with. They should be able to get to the point where we don't agree to disagree. That's a notion that I don't sign off on, but rather we agree in that we and another individual may have simply just different preferences. Well, if we've reduced everything of significance to a false dichotomy, and it's basically pick a side, and we're basically pressured into whether or not we could be allies with people based on criteria that's set by third parties, then we're going to have a hard time disagreeing with somebody and still seeing their humanity, or beyond that, finding a way to still connect in some sort of allied way. Now, one of the things I'm not speaking of right now are those significant chasms that exist politically between some individuals, whereby these positions are so far away from one another. The delta between these two positions is so immense that it almost trumps all the other potential commonality rituals. I'm not talking about those extreme examples. The only thing I guess I want to bring up is about 2 years ago, didn't it seem like everybody got along with each other a little more than they do now? 4 years ago, or maybe we should say 5 years ago at the timing of this recording, didn't it seem like we all got along a little bit more than we do now? Maybe you disagree, and that's fine, but I still contend that if we do not actively pursue overlap with the individuals that we are sharing this life with, then we are bound to experience more conflict than is necessary. I believe that conflict, that pressure, creates more of an individual. It allows them to retain their relationship with who they are, despite the different varying levels of pressures and stressors that are around their ecosystem. But I think that could come from an individual endeavoring to improve himself. It needn't come from the kind of conflict that's created in your inability, to form alliances with other people, right? So, I don't know, maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't. Who knows when this channel is going to get removed? I tend to step on toes and have experienced the consequences of that over the years. Obviously, this is demonetized. I don't care if you subscribe, if you hit the bell and whatnot. Do it or don't. If you want to stay connected to the work that I do, I would suggest you go to masterchim.com and put your email in. It's my free email newsletter. And I don't sell, your email addresses to anybody. I don't use it to market to third parties or anything like that. I tend to just share what's on my mind. And if you like it, sign up. I appreciate you guys. Talk to you guys soon. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.